Hello world. Hopefully this audio video is all working for everyone. We'll get started. This is the first of hopefully many Ask Me Anything. I want to make sure we're getting feedback in as many ways as possible, early and often. So yeah, for those tuning in, would love to hear all your most important questions, burning questions, and hopefully we can get through just about all of them. So just go ahead and shoot away in the chat and I'll try to read them off and answer what I can. Don't be shy. And if folks don't have questions, I'm happy to just dive in and talk about some of the things we're working on. One of the things that's really top of mind for us is getting back to applet creation, helping folks create more powerful applets, going beyond if this and that, something that is really top of mind, and our teams are actively working on it. Okay, so Justin Tech asked, is there an ability to have applets only trigger on certain days and times? So the answer to that's an easy one, is a resounding yes. So we have a service on IFT. We used to call those channels called the date and time service. So when you're creating an applet, just search for date and time as a trigger. And I believe it has triggers of a whole lot of different varieties, namely, days of the week, every day at a certain time, every hour at a certain time. I think you can even specify within the hour, kind of which 15, 30, 45-minute breakdown. And hopefully you can find something that is useful for your use case there. And if not, let us know what else we need to add. Good question. It looked like Victor had a very similar question. Let's see, Ray has a question about an issue with WordPress and self-hosted WordPress. And, huge props to all the folks out there that are still self-hosting their own WordPress blog. It's one of the use cases and services that has frankly been the hardest to maintain over time. And largely it's because there are just so many different things that can go wrong when you're hosting your own WordPress blog. So if you're having trouble with it, I'm happy to help you troubleshoot. My guess is it could be all kinds of different things. And probably easiest is to hit me up on Twitter at @Tibbets, at LTIBBETS on Twitter, and we'll go back and forth from there. Thanks, Ray. Cool. There's a question around, is there a repository of C# code to use IFT? I don't know of any offhand. There are plenty of open source libraries of folks that have shared, different, small and large projects that they've done, whether that's using IFT webhooks or actually building a service, putting your business on IFT. I'd recommend you search GitHub there, but I'm sorry, I don't know of any C# code repositories for IFT offhand. Another question is, do we have any plans to support multiple VATs for a single trigger? And the VATs are called actions. And the answer is yes. It's one of the things we're currently working on, the ability for any end user to add multiple actions to a single trigger. It's been something that the services, the businesses themselves, the other brands have had access to for quite some time, and we're working to bring that to end users as well. And we're, to be honest with you, we're toying around with the idea of, is that something that individual users would be willing to pay for? To have like a small subscription plan, and would love to get any feedback and thoughts on that. Something we're still kind of in progress with and gathering information on. So that was a question of a couple folks, the multiple actions. One of the things that we've found quite difficult to support is multiple triggers. People often think of multiple triggers as kind of conditional, but in all honesty, the triggers aren't really kind of conditional statements as much as there's events to be reacted to. But one of the things that we're working through is with a single trigger, with a single event, are there some other ways in which you could bring in other data, whether it's from that same service or another service, and then do some conditional logic around that? So even one of the use cases I read here in the chat was around maybe only turning on your Arlo camera at certain times of the day. So imagine, you have an applet that's somebody rings your doorbell. You want to turn on the camera because you want to maybe start recording something or making sure you're kind of capturing like an entryway or something like that, perhaps where your video doorbell doesn't capture, but you only want to do that at certain times of the day. That would be an example of like a trigger. If someone rings your doorbell, then we're calling them queries, is something that's also been available for the businesses on IFTTT for quite some time now. But a query would then be, what time of day is it? Get the current time of day. And then from there, you could then create some conditional logic to say, well, if it's between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., then turn on the camera. But if it's not between those times, then don't run that action. So let's see. So so somebody said they jerry-rigged the multiple triggers themselves. Yeah, one of the things you can do is just create multiple applets. A little bit of a hassle, because we don't support multiple triggers because triggers are really events versus conditionals, but you could always create additional applets. Yeah, Ray, hear you on the WordPress problems. Happy to help there if we can. You're a brave soul hosting your own WordPress blog. Huge respect. Let's see. Justin Tech says on the iPhone app, the word create is cut off. Yeah. We've got some layout issues that we're still working through there on the iPhone app. Please, if you wouldn't mind, pinging me on Twitter as well with a screenshot, and I'll make sure we tackle it just in case it's something we haven't seen yet. One of the things, I've got to give huge props to our team. We've been able to maintain and improve both the iOS and the iPhone app with a really small team. So we've got one fellow, Sid, working on our iOS app that supports millions of users. So it's pretty heroic effort, but we want to make sure we fix all those small little things when things don't lay out exactly right. Let's see. Justin's got another question. One of my applets sends me 2 notifications every time. Atmo Wind, super cool service, by the way, over 8 miles per hour, then send an email. One of the things to check, Justin, is are you getting those notifications from 2 different services? So IFTTT can optionally send you a push notification when your applet runs. And you can toggle that on and off. If you go to the applet settings, you can turn that off. But you might also be getting a notification from your email service. So when you get the email, whether it's in Gmail or Apple Mail or what have you, that could end up in another notification. If it is indeed 2 notifications from IFTTT and they look exactly the same, they don't say something different, then that's a bug. And again, send me a screenshot or more info on Twitter. And we'll run it down and fix it for you. Let's see. Ray asked about how about hooking into multiple Facebook pages. So this is something, since the beginning of IFTTT time, we started IFTTT back in, I think, 2010 is when we officially launched into beta. Folks have been asking to have different accounts hooked up to the same type of service, like Facebook or Facebook pages. And we've often, told folks if they want to do that to maybe create another IFTTT account, but I acknowledge that's pretty stupid. It's a big hassle to manage multiple IFTTT accounts, and it's one of the things we'd like to fix. And frankly, it's a use case that we found largely appeals to folks that are managing like multiple brands or other social media presences on Facebook or Twitter. And it's one of the things that we thought about, if we did have some kind of premium subscription plan for end users, is that something that those types of users would find valuable and would be willing to pay for? So if you have thoughts on that, ping me on Twitter or share them in the comments. But it's one of the things that we've really pushed off for too long, and we really should support. Let's see. So somebody, NYC Tuvin, is saying that since the update in March, IFTTT hasn't been working for him, and it's Instagram to Twitter and Facebook. If it's, it probably has less to do with an update to the app. So if you think about IFTTT, there's really kind of two big things that IFTTT does. One of those is we build and support the end user clients, iOS, Android, web, Apple Watch, so on and so forth. That helps people create and manage applets. But then, there's this whole kind of world that you don't really think about that much. It just kind of works, that runs in the back end. We call that the runtime. So it sounds like it's some kind of runtime problem. If something's not working, either an OAuth token that we have is invalid, or there's some other problem, I would suggest you also ping me on Twitter so I can get some more details and we can try to figure that out and get it fixed for you. Appreciate it. Wade is asking, how is IFTTT different than Zapier? Question we get a whole lot. I know, funny enough, I know the CEO over at Zapier, also named Wade. And we've got, I think huge love for Zapier. We often get compared. I think the biggest difference is that the end user audiences that we're pursuing, I believe are fairly different. We've always believed that we could reach the broadest number of people possible and really help a kind of end consumer user, somebody that may or may not work in tech, may not work at another company that's looking to either automate or connect things, that really is just trying to get all the brands in their own personal world to work together. And because of that, it's one of the reasons actually we've really prioritized trying to keep things very simple for the end user. We actually haven't, and I think we've actually waited too long and kind of mistakenly not focused on this enough, but we actually haven't brought a lot of the powerful ways in which you can build applets with conditionals or multiple actions to the end user, largely because what we found as our audience grew, we now have almost 23 million folks using IFTTT, that more and more of those users that were joining the service really just wanted to turn things on. They were using what we call published applets, oftentimes published by the brands or other users that were a lot better at creating their own applets and publishing them themselves. And I think what we need to do is go back and make sure that the end users have access to a lot of the same kind of powerful tools that we've built for the brands on IFTTT. So that's one of the things that we've got to do. And I think one of the things that Zapier has done really well over the years, because their end user has always been a slightly more technical and a little bit more, kind of small to medium business type end user. Brad MC, happy 10 years. Thank you. Appreciate it. I can't wait to work another 10 years on it. And I mean that sincerely, because, it's one of those things where you can easily, I think, go overboard, drink a little bit too much Kool-Aid. But I'm just as excited about what we're doing now as I was 10 years ago. And we'll just keep plugging away. And I know that IFTTT has the potential to make, the internet in general so much better and so much easier for people to use. So thank you. Let's see. Jeff Cohen is asking, are you working with Apple to get IFTTT integration with iOS shortcuts, formerly Workflow? So actually Workflow was one of our customers, one of the brands on the IFTTT platform. So we did work with Workflow, a bit of a mouthful there, in the past. We'd love to continue to work with them. I think one of the big differences there between what Shortcuts, formerly known as Workflow, does and what IFTTT does is IFTTT is solely about, internet services, things, with a server, in the cloud, quote unquote, with APIs. And where Shortcuts really excels is on the device, actually doing things across apps on your kind of end user client / device. your phone, basically. And would love to merge those two worlds so you can do cool stuff on your phone with shortcuts, cool stuff with all your internet services through IFTTT. So that would be a great idea. We have conversations, kind of always going with them, but nothing, on the short-term horizon to announce yet. Hopefully soon we'll be able to work again with shortcuts in the future. See, Ray is asking, managing 10 small business clients. So this is Ray, you're following up on the Facebook pages, multiple accounts. Good to hear that you would consider premium subscription. And I hear you on needing your clients to be a bit more active. So thanks for the feedback. Let's see, Ratted MC is asking, are there any plans to get offline support for certain applets on the device? That is a great question because it's one of the things, frankly, that we have considered over the years, and I think especially as you think through a lot of the use cases that are very specific to the mobile clients, iOS and Android, there are certainly use cases there that you would expect to work, whether you have an active internet connection or cellular connection or not. The problem, and one of the reasons that we have deprioritized that work, is that ends up being a subset. You basically would have to create an applet that is triggering from something on your device and then doing something on your device. And because so much of what we do depends on some type of cloud service or internet service. We talked about Facebook or Twitter, but it could be your Arlo camera. All those things basically make that round trip to the cloud. We've always felt that the work to support that small subset of use cases would be fairly high, a lot of work, and it wouldn't actually affect the vast majority of the use cases that we see. But if you have additional information on what that specific use case is, certainly would like to know, because at the end of the day, hear you loud and clear that some of those use cases that are just kind of device specific, it's a real bummer that if you don't have internet connection, they won't work. Let's see. There's another question from NYC Tuvin on when you had two IFTTT accounts, you'd get mixed up. You're talking to someone that might have 10 or 12 IFTTT accounts. Some of those for testing, and even I mix them up. I've got a couple actual IFTTT accounts that I use, and it's just not easy. And I think we'd love to figure out how to consolidate where you can have multiple services, multiple accounts across other services with just a single IFTTT account. They're definitely a big batch of use cases that would benefit from that. So it's something we'd like to do. Thank you, Peter. Yeah, the best way to contact me either now or afterwards, if you've got a bug or a problem or a suggestion, is at @Tibbets on Twitter. Let's see, EW is asking about his WeMo Motion. Shout out WeMo Motion. I've had a couple of those, I think, since 2011, 2012. Super cool. And they're not showing up when you go to IFTTT through the WeMo app. So I'm not quite sure what you mean by going to IFTTT through the WeMo app. You could give me some more details here, but if they're not showing up when you just open the IFTTT app and you're trying to create a new applet, and we have like a drop down that allows you to select which of your WeMo motions or which device, if it's another service, please let us know. One of the things, because WeMo was one of the first out of the gate with internet connected device. They were one of the first consumer IoT products out there, back in 2012, 2013. They've actually had many subsequent kind of migrations, changed the backend service. They've probably kind of rewritten a lot of the software that supports WeMo 2 or 3 times over the years. And I think they've really tried to do right by their end users by continuing to support all those devices. Like, for instance, my 2 WeMo motions, I think at least one of them might even be one of the kind of prototyped, pre-production devices before they actually started selling them. And they still work, but you do have to go in. I know I've had to do it a couple times, go into the WeMo app and kind of upgrade either the firmware that's on the device or upgrade your account. And they do a fairly good job of trying to take people through that, but that might be your problem. I've seen that problem before with WeMo. If you haven't kind of upgraded either your device or your WeMo account, those devices don't show up on IFTTT as they should. Yeah, Ratted MC, maybe you have some ideas there for EW on how to upgrade. And if you do that, or if you think that's not the issue, again, please reach out to me, and I'm happy to kind of do some sleuthing internally and check things out and see if we can get it fixed for you. Victor says on the date and time use case with Arlo and WeMo, he's got a slightly different thing than what I was describing. It looks like he wants his Arlo to trigger WeMo only during certain times, rather than turn the Arlo off during those times. So it looks like you need to connect 3 things. So actually, Victor, this is a perfect use case for something we're working on now. And it's this idea of adding additional power to the kind of, tried and true, if this then that applet structure. So if you think of an applet as if some trigger, an event, then that, then run some action. That's the basic structure. What we're proposing adding is there's still just one trigger, if then, or pardon me, if this, and we're going to add something we call a query. So after the trigger, fires, after the event happens, then you can run a query which would go out and get additional data. So you could go check to see what's your next meeting on Google Calendar, or you could check to see, what's the status of your, August lock. Is your door locked or unlocked? And then you can use that data both from the trigger and from the query to do some conditional work. You can inspect the data. What we're doing, I think, at first is, allowing folks to write a little bit of JavaScript. I know that doesn't, necessarily check all the boxes for everybody out there. There's only so many folks out there that have picked up JavaScript. So we want to make it something where you don't actually have to write code. But at first, we felt that JavaScript gave folks a lot of flexibility and power to be able to look at that data from the trigger and the query, inspect it, and then create some conditional, some JavaScript-based if else statements. And then from there, you can conditionally run or skip actions, and even have multiple actions that you could run or skip. So that's really kind of the feature set that we're currently considering. So as you think through that, see if that might help your use case. And again, happy to talk a little bit more. We'd love to get some feedback on what types of use cases this additional structure for an applet might support. Let's see. Wade's asking, why contact me with problems or feedback? So we do have a support team, of course, but I'm really right now in a mode of really trying to reconnect with the folks that are joining here on this Ask Me Anything. I think I've made a mistake, as the CEO here at IFTTT, getting a little bit disconnected from what the end users were doing. And I think that's something I'm trying to make up for. We've been spending a lot of time, and I personally have been spending a lot of time building out the business side of things. Our customers, the folks that pay, are the brands. And so we've been really paying, I think, a lot of attention to them, which is good, but I think we've done that at the expense of end users, and especially end users that are creating their own applets and looking to do more with IFTTT. And so we're going to make up for that lost ground soon. So I'd love to hear from you directly. Even though we do have a support team and folks that are also able to help, I'm happy to get more involved, and we'll be doing that increasingly so from here forward. So let's see. Slow One asks, there's a drop down that doesn't show his devices. It worked for years through the WeMo app. Okay, got it. Yeah. See if you can't upgrade. And again, this is one we'd probably have to dig in a little bit deeper to fix, but I hear your frustrations on that. Oh, Justin, good question on Uber Eats or Postmates. I'm a big DoorDash user. Yeah, I think I probably order DoorDash 4 or 5 times a week now. I don't know if that's a bad habit or not, but it sure is convenient. Supporting services like that, I think, would be a huge win, especially as we're beginning to see a lot of use cases, both from end users and from the brands, that involve delivery of some sort. You know, people ringing a doorbell or delivering something in a garage or something like that. And connected devices, especially in the home, can really help support that. And so we want to bring those types of use cases for like food delivery into the mix as well. That's a great idea. Let's see. Wade's asking, why did we pick the brand name IFTTT? Good question, because it's one of those things that has been a double-edged sword over the years, but I think it's been a net positive. You know, we've gotten a whole lot of different pronunciations of IFTTT, which is just fine. IFTTT, which is it's okay, but not super cool. You know, at the end of the day, we can't get too upset about how anybody pronounces our brand. We've got 3 fucking T's, so it's hard to pronounce. But that said, here's what's really worked out. It is dramatically different than anybody else's brand name, and especially when it's all capitalized. When you see it, you know, show up on Twitter, when you see it show up on like a press article or something, it really stands out. And so I think that uniqueness has really worked well for us. And there's been a couple of times over the years where we've thought long and hard on should we rename, should we change the brand? And I think we've basically decided each time to just double down. That uniqueness is really part of who we are. We want to be a different kind of technology company. And I think the brand, in a weird way, because it's unique, kind of helps convey that. Any other way to contact me than Twitter? Twitter is probably the easiest. You could probably guess at what my email address is at if.com, and happy to answer emails as well. But the email address isn't super hard to guess if you want to send me an email. Let's see, Victor says, awesome on the query structure. And he shared that a lot of people on the Arlo forums are looking for that. We don't have a release date for that just yet. We don't think it's that far out. But part of what we're doing now is starting to kind of gather some feedback, like I'm doing right now, to try to figure out exactly what are some of those use cases to make sure we can support the broadest or certainly the most useful use cases right out of the gate. So as you have ideas, Victor, for how to use that new structure, let me know, and we can kind of run it through what we're currently working on and see if we can support it. Cool. So Radit said JavaScript would be awesome. Good to hear it. Glad to see there's someone else out there that knows a little bit of JavaScript. And hopefully we'll continue to make it easier and easier to use for folks that don't know JavaScript as well. Let's see, Justin Tech says, if this happens during timer day, then something else happens. That during time of day, think of that as a potential query. So you could, something could happen. You could query for what time of the day it is, or if it's raining outside, or whatever you might think through. And then run. So glad to hear that could be really helpful. So let's see. Jeff Cohen asks, can you ask Weather Underground to provide a trigger for humidity drops below? So you might remind me, Jeff. I think we have some triggers with humidity, but perhaps we don't. Maybe just conditions like rain or temperature. But humidity drops below is certainly something we can add. It's data that I believe we include in some of the other triggers. I'd be interested to know if you'd share over the chat what you would want to do with that. So if the humidity drops below something, would you turn on a device from the house or open a window? I know we have a couple of services that can actually open a window. It would be cool to hear your use case there. Let's see, Justin Tech says, you're featuring us in an episode of a smart home series. Awesome, cool, good luck. Hopefully the filming of that goes well. Good luck, Justin. Sheila says, would that query functionality include the ability to check for things like, is it daytime or nighttime? Got it, yeah, so daytime and nighttime, I believe, Obviously there's going to be a way to check for what time of day it is. Now, as the sun moves, and I'm not a meteorologist or a astronomer. I'm not sure what the exact professional word for somebody that studies the day and night cycles are, but yes, the whether it's day and night time definitely changes over the course of the year. So you might be able to use a query that might look at what the sunset time is. I know we have some triggers that are, sunset, sunrise. And so you may be able to query, when was the last sunset? When was the last sunrise? And that would then give you a sense of, is the sun going to set at 7 p.m. or 5 p.m. In your relevant, kind of time zone or area. And that might be a way to get that functionality right out of the gate. But that's a good call out, something that we could probably easily support in a way that's a little bit less hacky. Justin asked me, what's my personal favorite way to use IFTTT? So I would say that, like a lot of our users, I've gotten a lot of use out of IFTTT in the home with some of the smart devices. Some of the things I'm doing involve like WeMo, turning on and off different lights during different situations. When I watch, we've got a projector in our living room that we watch at night sometimes. And, I like to have different kind of lighting set up for that and triggering those things with, like Alexa or Google Assistant, or even when we like turn on a certain, when we turn on that projector. So those are really cool. I've got a lot of use out of recently. One of the use cases I've shared quite a bit is, so we have 2 cats. I was a dog person growing up my entire life, and my wife has converted me. I'm now a cat person and a dog person, but the cats, well, they use their litter box quite frequently, and as easy as that maybe sounds relative to having to pick up your dog poop, the litter box is quite a hassle. So we have actually a service on the platform called Litter Robot, and that's kind of an automated litter box cleaner, and it actually saves a whole lot of time and hassle, and there's a whole lot less poop scooping involved. And one of the things that I've actually got a big kick out of, and actually has benefited from this new query structure, is I run my iRobot Roomba in the, we have the litter robot set up in the pantry in the kitchen, and the Roomba actually cleans just that room after the litter robot thing cycles. So there's always a little bit of litter that comes out. And one of the things I've done is use a query to check for, I actually use the time of day to make sure it doesn't run at like 2 a.m., when we're asleep in our apartment. The last thing we need is the Roomba going. So that's been one of the use cases that I've got a lot of use out of lately. Yeah, Slow One says, great brand name. Thank you. Yeah, unique is good. Yeah, Justin Tech queries, they're on their way. Excited to hear what people can do with them. Jeff Bowen, so you say they have humidity rises above. I'm not sure who you mean Weather Underground. Okay, I hear you. So you're saying we already have a trigger for Weather Underground humidity rises above, but we don't have the kind of corresponding trigger for humidity rise or drops below. Okay, cool. We'll see about adding that. That should be easy, especially since we already have the rises above one. Let's see, Radit MC says, any plans on making the IFTTT website UI a little more compact? You use a Chrome extension to get a denser layout. I've seen that one. I'm glad somebody built that. And it helps you probably look at more of the applets at once. So yeah, it's actually one of the things we just, I think a week ago, released a pretty big update to the web UI and the nav. We've got a lot of critical feedback recently about kind of the lack of the create button in the nav and some other things. So we really tried to address that. But I think maybe fitting more things on the screen could also make things a little bit more useful. So maybe one of the first things we can do is on the screen with your applets, what we now call the home screen. We could put more than just 3 per row. Maybe we could put, depending on how wide your screen is, put as many as we could. Let me know if that would be helpful. If that's really like the problem you're trying to solve, is just to see more of your applets at once without having to scroll down the page. Yeah, lots of padding, large text. And that's part of, and frankly, it's one of those things where right from the first day of IFT history, we really kind of felt strongly that having things be really big with lots of padding and white space would actually help people approach IFT in a different way, to help them kind of give them a different type of mindset. Because what we're really doing, and this was IFT started before the whole low code no code thing took off. You could maybe even say we were one of the first people to do that. We're helping people code, right? And I think for so many people that aren't programmers, I think the more technical or the more compact or smaller we made things, the more it felt like it was something that was meant for a more technical audience. So it was a way to help people really approach it with a different mindset. Oh, this seems so big and easy. They're almost kind of like Lincoln Logs or big Legos or something, and it helped people kind of overcome an emotional hump or barrier to actually begin to do something that was basically programming. But we want to make sure we're not doing that at the expense of the folks that have a lot of applets or need to move around the interface a lot faster. So that's really good feedback. Let's see, will there be more live streams like this? Sure. This was kind of an experiment. We emailed a small group of folks, really stoked that folks showed up with a lot of questions. But my sense is that this is helpful, certainly for us and myself. Hopefully it's helpful for you. And if it is, we'd love to do more. So like I said, I apologize for not being as connected to the end users, the people like yourself that actually use our product day in and day out. And I think that's a mistake that I really want to make up for. Because we've kind of been evolving our product relative to those end users a bit in a bubble, and we're not going to be able to get away with that for long, and we want to really make up for some lost ground there. Let's see. So I love the Roomba idea. You've got the Nito robot vacuum. Cool. So let's see. Is there any way? I guess the question about the Nito robot vacuum, it's a question of whether or not they're on the platform or not. So I'm sure, just about anything is possible with software. But if they're on the platform, the next thing would be to kind of reach out to the Nito folks and make sure that API that you're looking for would be supported on the platform. See, Mike Evers says, you've been using it for many years and it just works so well. Awesome. Thank you. Occasionally it will not turn on my wife's plant lights or turn off my outdoor lights at sunrise. Yeah, so when that happens, it could be a number of different things. And, sometimes if they're responsible, but I think, and I want to make sure I say this as candidly as possible, that's a very small percentage of the time. That doesn't mean we never make mistakes, but so much of the problems that arise with applets are really because of two different things. It could be one that your authentication for that other service, so basically IFTTT's ability to make those API calls on your behalf is now hindered because that authentication has changed. And different services do this in different ways. And it's one of those problems that we'd love to help solve over time. Some services actually invalidate your OAuth tokens, which is how we authenticate to make those API calls on your behalf. They invalidate those tokens on like a yearly basis. Some services do it whenever you change your password or if you change your email account or something like that. So that's one of the big reasons that things may not work. The other one is that IFTTT is highly dependent on other APIs being up. So we've over the years managed to achieve what is basically like a 5 nines percentage uptime. We haven't always been that good, but we've spent a lot of time, and our engineering team has made huge progress over the last 12, 16 months on that. But other services may not be. And so it's one of those things where, we need to gracefully handle that and also make sure you can see in the activity log what the problem was. So when those lights don't turn on, for you next time, Mike. Check the activity log for that specific applet. Go into the settings and there's a button that says View Activity Log, and you should see some type of error. It should say, hey, we failed to run this action, and it hopefully will give you a little bit more info. We'd like to add more details there, but it should at least register as a problem. If you don't see anything there, then that's probably there's a problem on our end. And again, hit me up over Twitter and we can take a closer look at that. Akiran, hopefully I'm not mispronouncing that. My guess is I am, but Akiran says, I have an if to turn my lights on at sunset. However, oftentimes it gets a bit darker slightly before sunset. I'd love to be able to define offsets to do like some kind of minutes before sunset. So this could be one of those things where I see a pretty good kind of hacky solution with this idea of triggers, queries, actions. So you could do something where you're literally triggering like every hour on the hour or every 15 minutes or something like that. But then you're filtering that, or kind of conditionally looking at when the sunset is. So you can then do a query. Okay, what time did the sun set last night, or what time is the sun going to set tonight? And then you can decide, okay, based on how much that delta is between when the sun is going to set and what the current time is, whether or not you want to run. So that's kind of a hacky way to do it, but it should be something that unlocks as we introduce these kind of queries and kind of conditional JavaScript, what we call filter code. Oh, what's a plant over my left shoulder? If you're talking about the little plant or the big plant, so I have no clue what the name of the little plant is. I guess I call it the plant I'm thankful is still alive. The big plant is called a fiddly ficus. I love plants, but I don't know a whole lot about them other than like the ones that I can keep alive watering once a week. They're my favorite. Anything that takes any kind of additional care often doesn't last long, and they don't end up on my favorites list. But that fiddly ficus was a gift from my mother-in-law, and thankfully it's still kicking ass today. I think I've had it 3 or 4 years. Let's see, some questions around the upcoming queries feature. Would there a way to get a different action depending on the output of query? That's one question. And then our second question is, I have some old phones or an app with webhooks to control Philips Hue lights with. Could I get a different brightness level depending on the time? Okay, yes. So two questions. The first one is, would you be able to run a different action? So the answer to that is yes. What we're working on now is the ability to run a query. So get more data from another service. So it could be one of the 2 services that are the trigger of the action, could be a totally different third service. The ability to run what we call filter code, which is basically JavaScript. So you can inspect the data, make some conditional decisions. And then we're adding the ability to have multiple actions, either from the same service or other services. So what you could do is you could add multiple actions, 2 or 3 different services. Right now, I don't think there's a real limit on how many actions you can add to an applet. But then you can use that filter code, the ability to kind of look at the query and make some decisions, and then decide, okay, well, skip this action, but run this other action, or run both actions, or skip both actions. So that would accomplish that use case. The other thing is around brightness level. So if brightness is a field that you can set for Philips Hue, which I believe it is. I have Hue lights, but I can't remember offhand exactly how it's implemented on IFTTT. You should be able to actually change the values for those action fields before you run the action in the filter code. So if you set the brightness to say 6, in the field, in the filter code, you can override that by setting the brightness to 8 or 9, depending on the query, or just depending on how many times it's run, whatever your use case might be. Let's see. Jeff Cohen asked, you have a lot of home automation triggered by voice commands with Google Home and IFTTT. It's awesome. conditions and multiple actions would solve everything. I hope so. My guess is it's not going to be perfect. And that's one of the things, whether it's as you think through kind of how I'm verbally describing it, or certainly after we launch it, we'd love to kind of understand what other use cases. Our hope is, with the addition of some of these new features, we can kind of help someone build almost anything. That said, there's going to be some limit to what's possible. And we want to make sure we're kind of covering as much surface area as possible while still keeping things relatively easy for folks to set up and maintain. Let's see. Did you previously have more than? Oh, I think he might have been, Jerry might be talking to someone else. Jerry, if that's a question for me, give me a little bit more info there. Sorry. NYC to Vin says, I need help with my account. Can I DM me on Twitter? I would just start, send me just a regular Twitter, at mention. And if it's something where you need to share something private, an email or something like that, you can move into direct messages. But just start, if it's something easy enough that you don't mind other people seeing, isn't necessarily private, just hit me up on Twitter with a regular mention. No. Well, cool. I probably have time for one or two more questions if you have them. But if not, I really, really appreciate everybody tuning in. This is, like I said, hopefully the first of many Ask Me Anything or sessions in which we're trying to make up for some lost ground. We really value the folks that have been with us for a long time, the folks that are kind of trying to create different types of applets, different use cases, really experimenting with the IF platform. And we want to kind of get back to helping those types of users get a whole lot more out of IF because you've been so patient with us over the years. People have been asking us for, multiple actions, conditionals, things like that, probably literally since the day we launched. And that's been 10 years now. And, even though we've added some of that functionality for some of the brands, we haven't done that for users. So really excited to get moving in the direction of those users that have been so patient with us. And hopefully we're going to deliver something that y'all are going to be really stoked about. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for tuning in. And Victor, hear you loud and clear. The JavaScript stuff is hopefully kind of like a V1, and it will allow us, it's really kind of a foundation that we can build a better user interface on top of. So you can imagine something that's more WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, buttons, forms, but at the end of the day, it kind of spits out JavaScript that you may even be able to go in and edit with JavaScript after you use the WYSIWYG forms. But that's definitely something we want to get to, but probably won't be available right out of the gate when we launch. Brad at MC, thumbs up. Sid is he's a one-man army, one-person army, and so he's done a great job, and so has Ja and Priya on our Android app. So we've got two people on Android, and they're doing an excellent job as well. So we're really, really thankful and impressed by what our team's been able to do with a very kind of highly popular application and a really still nimble small team. Glad this all worked out. And Ray is asking, how big is the IF team? So we're just under 40 right now. And so we've grown over the years. We've never been bigger than, larger than 40. We've kind of hovered between 30 and 40 folks for the last couple of years now, but we'll probably be growing quite a bit more later this year as our business continues to grow. So the business itself is doing really, really well. And it's, we're very thankful, even with some of the quarantine and COVID stuff happening, that the business continues to thrive. And hopefully that allows us to grow our team and again, support more of these use cases and more of the users like the folks that are tuning in today. Cool. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. That's probably all the time we have today. And hopefully we'll do this again soon. And if you have questions in the meantime, like I said, hit me up over Twitter. We'll get back to you hopefully within a matter of hours, and really appreciate all the feedback. So thank you all. Cheers and talk soon.